Have you ever, glanced at that RX symbol on your prescription? Or maybe just picked up some everyday medicine
Hmm.
and just stopped and wondered, where did that symbol actually come from? Or how did the pharmacist, the person helping you, how did their role even develop?
It's a fascinating question, and the answer goes, well, much deeper than most people probably think. It's really woven into the whole story of human history itself.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're digging into today. This is our deep dive into the history of pharmacy.
Right.
Our mission really is to trace these, well, surprising origins and the incredible evolution of pharmacy practice.
Yeah.
We want to show how it's tied into civilization and, how it's still changing today.
And we've got some great source material to draw on here, a really comprehensive presentation covering the history, packed with historical records, great insights.
Yeah, it paints a picture of just how ancient pharmacy's roots are.
Oh, incredibly ancient, further back than you might even guess.
So let's unpack that. Our sources suggest pharmacy isn't just old, it's like as old as civilization itself.
Pretty much. We're talking about evidence like fossils of medicinal plants found right next to Neanderthal remains.
Neanderthals. How far back are we talking?
Around 50,000 BC.
Wow. 50,000 BC. That's astonishing. What does that tell us about, the very beginnings of medicine?
Well, it really points to this basic human drive, doesn't it? To find solutions, to heal using what's around us.
It's like observing nature.
Exactly. Early humans, just like animals, you could argue, watched nature for everything: food, shelter, fire, and crucially, medicine. It was almost intuitive. Nature gave medicine, as the source puts it.
And it wasn't just vague ideas, right? Our sources mentioned something really specific. The first authenticated prescription.
Yeah, get this, dating back to 3700 BC, and that actual record. It's now in the British Museum.
3700 BC.
Yeah.
In a museum.
Yeah.
That suggests some level of, formal practice even way back then.
It really does. It shows they were already codifying things, not just trying stuff out randomly. And if you look at actual drug preparation, the earliest records we have for that are from Babylonia,
When was that?
around 2600 BC. And by Sumerian times, say 2000 to 1500 BC, pharmacy was already seen as a distinct part of medical practice, recognized.
Okay, so as societies got more complex, did we start seeing specialists emerge? People focus just on this.
Yes, exactly. You start seeing individuals shaping the field. Like around 400 BC, there was Diocles of Charistus. He was a Greek rhizotomoi.
Rhizotomoi, what does that mean?
It literally means root cutter or root gatherer. So basically an expert specifically in medicinal plants.
Ah, specialist. So that's a sign of things getting more structured.
Definitely. It's a shift from general knowledge to dedicated expertise about plants and what they could do. It sort of laid the groundwork for, well, pharmacology, really.
And that kind of systematic knowledge leads us to a really key text, right? Pedanius Dioscorides and his work De Materia Medica.
Oh, absolutely pivotal, concerning medicinal substances. This wasn't just a book. For something like 1,500 years, it was the reference book.
1,500 years.
Yeah, imagine that. Guiding pharmacy and medicine across Europe, the Islamic world, for centuries. It was incredibly comprehensive for its time, a monumental piece of work.
Okay, so that's Greece. But pharmacy wasn't just happening in one place, right?
Yeah.
What about other parts of the ancient world, like Egypt?
Egypt's fascinating. There are several important documents, like the Kahun Papyrus from around 2000 BC, that one even mentions veterinary medicines.
Wow, veterinary too.
Yeah, but the big one is the Ebers Papyrus, dates to about 1550 BC.
And what was that like?
Picture this, a scroll, 22 yards long.
22 yards.
Yep. It was basically their version of a modern formula book. It lists around 700 different drugs.
700.
Yeah.
Back in 1550 BC. That's incredible. What kind of things were in there?
Well, some things you'd recognize: wine, beer, yeast, vinegar, turpentine, even castor oil.
Castor oil. Still used today in some ways.
Exactly. It shows their empirical understanding was pretty sharp, even without modern chemistry. They observed what worked.
Did they only use plants?
No, they use minerals too: iron, lead, bitumen, common salt. And here's something really wild. They apparently used finely powdered precious stones.
Precious stones. Like what?
Like emeralds and sapphires, ground up to treat diseases.
Powdered emeralds. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
It really shows how ideas about medicine have changed.
Definitely. And speaking of Egypt, that actually brings us back to that symbol we started with, the RX.
Ah, yes, the RX. It have Egyptian roots.
Well, it's one strong theory. It's linked to the Eye of Horus.
The Eye of Horus. Symbol of?
Protection, royal power, good health. very potent symbol. It's also sometimes linked to Jupiter, the Roman god of healing.
So mythology plays a part. But isn't there a more practical origin, too?
Yes, there is, and it's probably the most direct one. RX is likely an abbreviation for the Latin verb recipere,
Prepare, meaning.
meaning take or thou, like an instruction. It was the heading on the formula telling the apothecary or patient, take this.
Take this, like a recipe.
Exactly. It's the same root as
Yeah.
our word recipe. So you've got this mix of ancient symbols, mythology, and impractical Latin instruction all bundled into that little R.
That's quite a story for one symbol. Okay, let's shift continents. What about ancient China?
China had a rich tradition too. They had the Punsao, which translates to the Great Herbal. It listed about 150 remedies.
Many memorable examples.
Oh, yeah. How about toad's eyelids for colds?
Toad's eyelids? Seriously?
Apparently so. Or earthworms rolled in honey for gastritis.
Okay, definitely shows a different approach. Very experimental based on what was locally available and observed.
Absolutely. Now back towards Greece. Hippocrates, he took medicine in a whole new direction, right?
He really did. Two huge steps, according to our sources. First, looking for natural causes and effects of disease, moving away from just blaming the gods.
Right. A massive shift in thinking.
And second, he produced the first really clear descriptions of diseases, of epidemics, basically laying the groundwork for clinical observation.
And around that time, mythology reflected this growing focus. Asclepios, he kind of took over from Apollo as the main god of healing in Greece around the 7th century BC.
And then there's Galen, another huge name from Greco-Roman times.
He's Galen, yes. Physician, surgeon, and famous for his medicinal formula called theriac.
Theriac, what was special about that?
Well, it wasn't simple. It was this complex herbal jam, supposedly with 64 different ingredients.
64. Why so many?
It seems like an attempt to create a panacea, a cure-all, an antidote for everything. An early kind of polypharmacy, the idea that more ingredients meant more power. It was incredibly influential for centuries.
Wow, okay, let's look at ancient India now. Another major center of ancient knowledge.
Definitely. In Hindu belief, Lord Vishnu is said to have invented the science of medicine, and Dishanvantari is the commonly worshipped god of medicine.
And they have Ayurveda, right?
Yes, Ayurveda, the science of life. It's based on one of the oldest Hindu scriptures, the Atharveda, maybe 3,000 years old. And get this, it's still practiced today by about a fifth of the world's population.
Still practiced today. That's incredible staying power.
It really is. It shows how these ancient systems can persist. India also had key figures like Karaka and Sushruta.
Doctors and pharmacists.
Both, yeah. They studied over 1,000 herbs, building this huge body of knowledge. And Ayurvedic ideas spread, particularly with Buddhism, across Asia. It shows how interconnected medical knowledge was, even back then.
So we have this amazing global picture of ancient pharmacy. But things started to change, to formalize more as we move into, say, the 16th, 17th centuries, especially in Europe.
Exactly. Particularly in Britain and Europe, you see the art of the apothecary really developing rapidly.
And these apothecaries wanted recognition.
They did. They wanted to form their own guild, separate from, say, grocers, to acknowledge their specific skills.
And that led to something specific in England.
A really defining moment. In 1617, King James III granted the apothecaries a royal charter. This officially separated them from the grocers' company.
Why was that separation so important? What did the king think?
Well, the king apparently saw apothecary practice as an art and a mystery.
An art and a mystery.
Yeah, implying it was a complex, specialized knowledge, maybe even a bit secret, not just simple trading like the grocers did. It really set the stage for it becoming a distinct profession.
But it wasn't instantly a clear profession, right? There was still confusion, especially between apothecaries and physicians.
Oh, absolutely. For nearly 200 years, things were messy. Apothecaries often diagnosed and treated, but technically could only charge for the drugs they sold, not for their advice.
And physicians.
Physicians were supposed to prescribe, not dispense drugs, but many did anyway, so there was conflict and confusion.
Until
the Apothecaries Act of 1815. This was a huge step.
Okay, so what did the 1815 Act do?
It finally drew a much clearer line between medicine and pharmacy. Physicians diagnose and prescribe. Apothecaries and later pharmacists compound and dispense. It helped define the distinct roles.
Did it create any new roles?
It did sort of formalize the role of the dispenser. These were often assistants, maybe in hospitals or dispensaries, who weren't fully qualified apothecaries but could compound and dispense under supervision. The Society of Apothecaries even started offering exams for them from 1815.
So structure is emerging, and with that, the words people used started changing too, right? Like the word chemist.
Right. Originally, it was often spelled Chymist.
Chemist?
Yeah, and it was often linked more to pure chemistry, even alchemy, rather than specifically pharmacy. The lines were blurry.
But that changed.
Around 1790, the chemist spelling became standard, suggesting a move towards a more scientific approach. And by 1841, the pure chemists formed their own Royal Society of Chemistry, further separating the fields.
Okay. Then what about chemist and druggist? That sounds more like a pharmacist.
It does. That term popped up in the late 18th, early 19th century. And under the 1868 Pharmacy Act, it became an official title.
Room.
For those who passed what was called the minor examination, set by the Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain, it was the minimum qualification needed to register as a pharmacist.
The minor exam, so it established a basic standard.
Exactly, a baseline competence for public safety. And then there was pharmaceutical chemist.
Sounds more advanced.
It was intended to be. The term pharmaceutical was used in Europe for a long time and in England from the 17th century. But when the Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain adopted pharmaceutical chemist in the mid-19th century, it generally signified a higher level of skill, especially in organic chemistry and complex compounding.
These changing terms really reflect that drive towards professionalization, which seems to have kicked off with societies and laws.
Absolutely. In Great Britain, 1841 was key. A London chemist named Jacob Bell got colleagues together to form the Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain.
And what was their main goal right away?
To get the profession organized and recognized, they immediately started lobbying for laws to control who could register as a chemist and who could sell poisons. Safety was a big driver.
Did they succeed?
Their first big win was the Pharmacy Act of 1852. It set up an official register for chemists and druggists and confirmed the society's legal status.
But the really big one was later, 1868.
Yes, the 1868 Pharmacy Act was pivotal. It made qualifying exams mandatory for anyone new coming into the field.
Mandatory exams.
Okay. It restricted titles like pharmaceutical chemist to registered people, gave the society the power to run the exams, and crucially, it defined pharmacy as being controlled by pharmacists.
What do you mean controlled by pharmacists?
It meant the medical council, which represented doctors, couldn't control the examination and registration of pharmacists, which they had wanted to do.
So it secured pharmacy's independence as a profession.
Exactly. A huge step for professional autonomy. They carved out their own space.
Okay, that's Great Britain. What about the U.S.? Were similar things happening?
Yes, on a